Daffy and Wackyland has finally been released on HBO Max/Max, and I have the director in studio to discuss its inception to the final product. So, of course, you realize this means podcast.
Are you ready, eager young space cadets?
Meep, meep.
I saw a pussycat.
Where's the kaboom? There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
Hello, and welcome to Of Course You Realize This Means podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Graves, and with me today, it is an honor to bring to you the director and mind behind Daffy and Wackyland, a send-up to the Bob Clampett Porky and Wackyland, Max Winston.
Of course. Thank you for having me on here. I'm doing pretty well today. Yeah, the internet's a little iffy, but I think it will be good from here on out. And yeah, doing pretty well.
Fingers crossed. So recently, to touch on some Looney Tunes news, we had a brand new video game that was announced during Nintendo, like this Nintendo drop of like all of these console games. But specifically for Looney Tunes, there's a new sports game called Looney Tunes Wacky World of Sports. And it will be coming out on not only Nintendo Switch, but the PS5 and Xbox as well.
Acme proudly presents Looney Tunes Wacky World of Sports, where your favorite tunes will compete in your favorite sport.
This will feature a collection of mini games based on basketball, soccer, tennis, and golf, with unique gameplay twists like power-ups and special moves. Now, I'm a huge fan of Looney gaming, and I had Bugs Bunny B-Ball as a kid. I had the Space Jam game for PlayStation 1, where you actually got to play as Michael Jordan and the Looney Tunes. Not to mention Space Race, Tiny Toons Adventures, Wacky Sports. There's so many of these. Did you ever play any of these as a kid, or did you have any interest in sports gaming?
I mean, I was never huge into sports, really. I have always been big into Looney Tunes and cartoons, and I do remember playing some of them when I was a kid, like renting the game from video stores and stuff when that used to be a thing.
Yeah.
I was like really into NBA Jam, I remember, but that wasn't exactly a Looney Tunes related sports game. But There were some sports games I really liked just because the gameplay was great. But yeah, I remember like playing some of the Looney Tunes sports games, but I never owned them, so I didn't spend a lot of time with them. Yeah.
Sure. NBA Jam is such a fun one, and it had like this arcade feel, and if they can introduce that with the Looney Tunes, I think that would be great. I would love an NFL Blitz with Looney Tunes. That would
I did used to play that. That'd be cool. Yeah. The gameplay was great on that.
So let's get into Daffy and Wackyland. Warner Brothers didn't initially release this with the collection of shorts with the show run by Pete Brownguard and Alex Kirwan. This was put into the festival circuit for an entire year before coming to Max and the public for us to see it. But I was fortunate enough to see it with you, actually, at the Animation is Film Festival here in Los Angeles last October.
Oh my God, it's an animation festival. It doesn't mean that you know. I know. Cosplay. That's Max Winston, who directed and made that final film that we just saw, and Eric Bauza, who voiced many of the characters. Jerry Becker. That's me. I don't know where to begin except just a quick question just to get everybody in here. And Max, not only because of your costume, I want to hold off a little on questions to you because I want to ask you directly about the last film, like kind of condensed in a few minutes. But what do you guys think of seeing these on the big screen? I'm just going to throw that out there. Stupid little quick question. Because seeing them on the big screen is pretty amazing to me. You watch them regularly that way?
No, we never get to watch them that way. We've been making these over the last 3 years. We've been making these from home, so mostly seeing them on a computer. But obviously, this is, as you mentioned, this is how cartoons are meant to be seen, with audience reaction, hearing people laugh. How do you guys feel about it?
Hello. Yeah, it's actually surprised how good they look. It's interesting seeing the evolution of them from the small screen to the big screen. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is the ideal way to watch cartoons on a large, beautiful-looking screen with a big group of people that love cartoons, and they looked amazing up there. Yeah, and sounded amazing too.
Take stock.
I think maybe the only time I've ever seen it on the big screen was when we had announced it at the Ottawa Animation Film Festival many, many years ago. And it's so cool to see it here in LA with you guys. Thank you guys for coming out on a Sunday morning. I'm sure you guys partied hard last night. There's no better way to nurse a hangover than here with some Looney Tunes cartoons.
I just gotta say that I'm old enough from the days where if you ran something that was not made for theaters on a big screen, it would look awful. You know, these things are just, they're theatrical as far as I'm concerned. And there is good, and I just, last little comment that I want to make toward you guys is, don't you feel proud that you had the opportunity to make Looney Tunes, actual Looney Tunes for Warner Brothers, in the style of the original cartoons? What do you think, Alex?
I almost don't have words, and even looking back now, how this project came about, the timing, it's a miracle that this thing happened. It's a miracle that they did all of them. They had this initiative to make 1,000 minutes of Looney Tunes, and that they hired Pete Brownguard, who I wish could be here to speak about this. They let him do it basically however the heck he wanted to do it, which was like, let's just make more of them. Let's make more Looney Tunes. Let's not worry about trying to reinvent them.
Can you talk about the whole run and that experience with having your short out there and it getting this acclaim, but you're not able to really spread the word and tell people to watch it yet?
Yeah, it was sort of a funny experience. I mean, it's not like, people start spreading rumors or conjectures on the internet about, why isn't Warner Brothers releasing this? And, is there some weird reason? And there wasn't really, it was not a nefarious thing. It's not like a, Coyote versus Acme sort of situation. Yeah. It's just, they were trying to figure out what to do with it. And they were kind of just trying to figure out the best place for it to end up, presumably to, maximize a return or something on their end. They didn't say those words to me. I'm just speculating on that. And so in the meantime, they submitted it to some of these bigger animation festivals and to the Annies and such. And so it was cool that people here and there were starting to, get to see it. But yeah, so many people were asking me when can I see it? How do I see it? I just always I don't know. I don't know yet. They haven't told me. But it was fun. I mean, I got to go to Annecy, and that's where it premiered, and it premiered in the big theater there, full, and that was sold out. So, I mean, there was 1,000 people in the theater. It was crazy. So to work on this thing for so long, mostly on my own with a few people helping me. I mean, on my side of it, aside from, the music, sound effects and such, then to suddenly be in a room with 1,000 people watching it for the first time, it was pretty surreal. Yeah. And it was great to hear people react to it and the jokes they laughed at or moments that, hit the hardest. Because other than that, it's just me and maybe some friends I've shown that have come by my studio. So it was a cool experience to start to get to watch it with an audience here and there.
So when we were developing this series, there was this idea that was put forward by the executives that okay, we're gonna make 1,000 minutes of Looney Tunes. And Pete Brownguard was like, great. And they said, and every one of them is gonna be in a different style. And we were always like, yes, every single Looney Tune will be in a different style. And we were behind closed doors, we were let's just need to figure out how to get this to work. If we can make Bugs Bunny look great in one cartoon and keep that going, that's great. Well, we always had this thing on top. We're going to do some of these in different styles, and so because I wanted to make sure if we were doing it smart, and we were doing it in a way that felt appropriate to the subject matter. It wasn't arbitrary, doing a different style arbitrarily.
I can't imagine how rewarding that must have been. But also, congratulations on your Annie nomination for this. I wish it would have won. I think it should have won.
That would have
It
been
is
cool.
a phenomenal
Yeah.
piece of work.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, let's just get into it. So recently you've worked on Wendell and Wild and the Apple Plus series, which I love, the After Party. How did you get started in stop motion animation?
I've been doing stop motion professionally for about 16 years now, so quite some time. Yeah, it's been a while. It's crazy. But
That is a while.
I've always made art my whole life since I was a little kid, and my parents are also artists, so they, fostered that with me. They didn't tell me to not pursue that. They rather told me, that's great, you should keep pursuing these things. And, eventually that made me end up going to CalArts, like so many people in animation do.
Yeah. Good parenting.
And I didn't know I didn't know if I wanted to do stop motion when I was there, but while I was there, I got really into stop motion. I just realized that it combines a lot of my favorite art forms into one art form. And I just loved the idea of like putting anything in front of the camera, taking frames, and then now it's in your film. That was like very appealing to me. I love drawing, but as opposed to having to draw everything that you see in the film, I like taking things from life and just objects and materials and putting them in front of the camera. And so that's some reasons why I gravitated towards stop motion. And yeah, I've started working at Screen Novelties, a small stop motion company in LA, soon after graduating, on the shows The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack and Chowder, and worked on the stop motion and puppetry stuff on those shows. And those are some of my first jobs in stop motion.
Nice. So yeah, like the artistry of stop motion is very much more tactile, and you get to do a lot of mixed media, which I think you're referring to, and integrating live elements to bring together this really unique style that is unparalleled and can't be accomplished with just drawings. And I love that about this. And I cannot believe this is the first ever Looney Tunes stop motion anything, but let alone a full short. You got to do a full 7-minute short, like in this style. That's phenomenal. But this isn't the first time you worked with Pete Browngarden. You had a segment that was in Uncle Grandpa, and you also worked on SpongeBob. Can you talk a little bit about your work with those animated properties and how it kind of expanded your portfolio into this?
Yeah. So yeah, when I was working at Screen Novelties on the Flapjack stop motion and other things for Flapjack, I met Thurup Van Orman, the creator of Flapjack, because he would come by the studio sometimes. And I had met him previously to that, but we caught up again, and I gave him a copy of my student film that was going around in festivals at the time called I Live in the Woods. And he really liked it and said, well, would you want to storyboard on Flapjack? And I'm like, sure, okay. So I, worked at Cartoon Network and storyboarded just 2 episodes. It was like a brief, that was a few months basically of working there. I forget, maybe 4 months or something. But Pete Browngardt was my storyboard partner, and that's where we met.
Oh, wow.
And we hit it off right away the first, hour we met or whatever. Became friends right away. And from there, Pete would go on to create the show Secret Mountain Fort Awesome. Which was sort of a brief, I think they did 1 season, I think. And then soon after that, he created Uncle Grandpa.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
While doing Uncle Grandpa, he'd said, I would love to have you do a segment sometime or something in stop motion. And I was like, that sounds awesome. So yeah, there's an episode of Uncle Grandpa, I forget what it's called, the director's episode or something, where there's, I did a segment, Penn Ward did one, Mike Wartella, I believe, did another one in that episode, and then Nick Cross did amazing like 2D animated full animation versions of Uncle Grandpa to tie all the shorts together.
Nick Cross is incredible.
Yeah, Nick Cross is amazing. And so that was like, you know, a pretty big project for me at the time. And also Pete, you know, really just said, just go nuts, like do whatever you want. The only rules were no sex and no gore. So besides that, it was just, you know, go nuts. And we set it so it could be in Uncle Grandpa's imagination. And so I could just go crazy. And that's what I like to do. I like to not really have limitations and just to be, you know, let loose to do what I want. And that's, Pete recognizes that. So he gave me that opportunity. And it was a similar approach, not to fast forward too much, but the Looney Tunes short, it was like, he's like, you know, go crazy. And he, you know, told the executives, this is this guy, he does this style, and we're just going to let him do his thing on it, basically.
So there was a handful of shorts that we had been talking about from very early on. And that was one that I brought up. I was like, I'd love to do a solo Witch Hazel coat. We don't like to do weird pairings. Like we don't like to do like Foghorn Leghorn with Marvin the Martian or something like that, because that doesn't generate comedy. But I said there are adversary characters that I think would make great lead characters. I think they're strong enough they can carry a cartoon on their own. And I said Witch Hazel is absolutely one of those characters. So I wanted to do a different style for this cartoon. And so what we did is we looked to things that the Looney Tunes, so it felt were related to Looney Tunes. We looked at things that those artists were inspired by. Chuck Jones was very, very influenced by Ronald Searle at a certain point in his career. Ronald Searle was a British print cartoonist. And I said, I think we could do a very sort of mid-century modern, which is kind of what the Witch Hazel cartoons are, but I think we can sort of take it further, go even more sort of Ronald Searle and do some fun things, you know, with the color that he wouldn't have been able to do with the technology at the time. And I was really thrilled with how it turned out. But by the way, I mean, Max is another.
Oh, I'm gonna get to that.
We'll get to that. That was another like a cartoon. Like, we think we can do this cartoon, and it's completely own different style, and this will be the style that will be appropriate to that. But we can.
I want to ask about all that, but we'll get some Eric questions in here.
Yeah.
No. So Eric, obviously the big thing with you is your masterful recreation of these classic characters, voice characterizations. Obviously you're a disciple of Mel Blanc, and
the answer will always be Mel Blanc. Any question about voiceover, it's always going to be the be all end all for me is Mel Blanc.
And the thing about, I'm just going to talk to you for a minute. No, the thing about Mel Blanc is. Back in those days, they did some different things. I don't know if you guys even tried this, but they recorded like on a sound stage, right, instead of a recording booth. You know, just kind of this weird echo they have in those cartoons, which is cool. There's something about those old ones, particularly in the '40s, where it's Mel Blanc, it's the directors, but boy, you believe those characters. He is so acting. He is so, and I feel that way about you. I feel that way about your stuff. You know, you are, we don't think about, is it Eric, is it Mel? We're in the cartoon. We're watching that, what the character is thinking, motivated, whatever. You know, tell us about your technique on that.
Oh, well, thank you. Those are such kind words. Again, it's really just going back to as these guys did, went back to the drawing board. You know, we're not selling shoes. We're not paired up with the sports superstar. They literally went back to the roots of these cartoons, and that's always been essentially my take on the characters. Is anytime, and I always say this, anytime Warner Brothers gives me the keys to the Warner Brothers Cadillac, I always promise to take it around the block without scratching it and fill it up with gas, as it was when I took it out. And it's always going to be about, those masterful performances that Mel Blanc left us with. You know, I think they're 80.
Tweety Bud's now 80 years old.
Yeah, Tweety's 80. I mean, they're all in their 80s now. We talk about these guys like our oldest relatives. But yeah, they're all individual personalities, not just voices. A lot of people always think about voice acting as just funny voices, but he really did, like, separate them
you can't really tell that they're done by one person. And it literally takes an army. It's not just me. There's Jeff Bergman up there, Bob Bergen's up there, Fred Tatasciore, Candy Milo. Occasionally we had, I think, Steve Stanton as Pete Puma.
Yep.
There's a couple other amazing voiceover artists up there, and without their legacy with these characters, I couldn't join the table. I went from eating at the kids' table at Thanksgiving to the adults' table because of those guys. So thanks.
I want to hear the technique-y thing you like when you get the call that they've got a new one or a new two. I don't know how they do one at a time.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. When they audition these characters, like I said, I just did them for a pinball machine that's coming out.
Cool.
Spoiler alert! Get fired for telling you that, guys.
Spoiler alert! You lose.
Yeah, a pinball machine. I've done them for a Nike commercial. I've done them for Space Jam. I've done them for these shorts, and every time. It depends on the storyteller, like what they need out of the character. But what I love so much about anytime someone uses Looney Tunes for their stories, or remakes, or reboots, or modernization, is that the world around them may change, but they always stay who they are. At least when I perform them, I always just make them like as if they were coming out of like the 40s. And if there is an audition for Bugs like this one, they had definitely called for he's not necessarily the dry
not the dry sarcastic Bugs, but like the more ooh, I'm dying,
like the more energetic Bugs. And I think if there's anything that I liked about these is that there was more energy and more times to be unhinged. And as a performer, you could be trapped in this box of trying to make the sound of the character sound precisely like the character on only the sound, but that could really cut your acting short. Like there's so much emotion, and there really only are 7 minutes, right? About 5 to 7 minutes. Some of them maybe less. And there's such a range of acting from the beginning frame to the end frame that you have to squeeze in there. And sometimes you can't think about, especially with Daffy. Daffy's, I would do Daffy, but I don't want to ruin this microphone.
It's a very floppy voice.
And he's all over the place. So you can't really, you could definitely keep the voice print in your back pocket, but it is the acting, and it is what these guys need from me as a performer to make the shorts really energetic.
Do you get just a script, or do you get the script and the boards to work it?
Usually I get the script, but sometimes I don't even read it until I'm in the booth now. Because any kind of preparation that you might have, especially if there's any young performers out there, it's like, definitely know the words, definitely know what's happening in the story. But once you're in that booth, you have the amazing producers and artists and voice director Jack Fletcher, and they also have the animatic there to kind of step you through every gag, every point in that story. And I think that for me is like, that's where you invest all your time. I don't even remember recording some of these. It's such an out of body experience. I'll wake up and be like, wait, what? Where am I? We started out recording in a studio, then we got hit with the pandemic, recorded most of these EDR in my bedroom closet. Wow. And then I was like, we'll get back into the studios eventually, and then we didn't, so I had to buy a booth. So it's been a weird journey, but just like this SAG-AFTRA strike and the pandemic, animation has somehow managed to escape the wrath of these things. We're still working. It's a kind of amazing thing.
You can't kill a cartoon, that's for sure.
Yeah, the SpongeBob stuff I worked on at Screen Novelties as well. There's a Christmas episode from about 12 or so years ago, and I did a lot of work on that, on the fabrication and then animation. And then they did they're always doing some SpongeBob stuff at Screen Novelties. So they did some stuff for some of the features, the SpongeBob features, and I animated some of that. Like there was a dolphin character in Sponge Out of Water, I think, the second feature, and I animated some of the dolphin and whatnot. Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, so getting to the short, basically Bob Clampett did his thing back in the 40s, and now you're doing this with the same kind of idea. You take a Looney Tunes character and you throw him into Wackyland with the dodo bird and just go balls to the wall bonkers with it. You have crazy characters. You have dogs and cats eating each other. You have a snake that kisses Daffy, and you don't know what anyone's intentions are. You don't know what's going to happen. Anything can happen.
Cats and dogs together at last. Good and evil? Having a blast?
Yeah.
I guess, like, I know that the pitch was insane, and how it all came together for you to get started on this was just, you know, lightning in a bottle. Can you tell us what Pete asked of you for this short?
Yeah, I mean, so when I first heard either from Pete or maybe someone else that he was going to be in charge of these new Looney Tunes shorts they were making, I was like, well, that's a great decision, because he's a cartoon fanatic. You know, he loves cartoons and he knows what he's doing and he has good taste. So that was the perfect person to be in charge of these cartoons. And so I was like, I don't want to just ask him, but I hope maybe he'll ask me to, like, I don't know, do something on Looney Tunes. I'm a huge Looney Tunes fan since I was a kid. So the next time we talked, he did tell me really early on, I want to get you to do an episode. And I was just like, okay, this is a dream come true. It's crazy to me that I even got the opportunity. But so a little further down the line, when it became an official thing and, okay, you're going to do one of the episodes, we were kind of brainstorming, you know, what characters and whatnot. I had some thoughts. When I was a kid, Wile E. Coyote was my favorite Looney Tune character because he was always building these crazy things, and I've always loved to build crazy things. Hence why I do stop motion. I mean, now I love the Wile E. Coyote shorts, of course, but now Daffy's probably one of my favorite characters. You know, I have different favorite characters as I grew up and whatnot, but as a kid, I just thought Wile E. Coyote was so cool, because he was just this inventor. So I thought, like, well, maybe Wile E. Coyote, and
that one-to-one makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I know. Huh?
The impossible becomes reality.
And so we were kind of brainstorming, and him and Alex Kirwan ultimately had ideas that they threw my way. That is ultimately what we did, because I mean, they were great ideas. He said, well, what about doing the Daffy Duck? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, he's one of my favorite characters. And then him and Alex, I guess, had thought, well, what about like Daffy and Wackyland? And I'm like, yeah, basically everything he was saying was like, you know, getting more and more appealing to me. So we kind of settled on that early on, like a loose, okay, it's Daffy and Wackyland. And I think it's like, you know, I think Pete knew kind of from our Uncle Grandpa experience together, like, oh, just put Max in a crazy zone where anything can happen and, like, you know, greatness will occur or something, you know, basically. So I think he knows like where I best thrive, which is like, yeah, in surreal areas that are just crazy, and you can, you know, are more about that and less about, you know, I don't know, like a sitcom setting or something. So I think that's kind of maybe why they thought, oh, let's do like Wackyland. Max is like, that's what he thrives in, is like wacky lands.
I love that they gave you absolute freedom with it. I mean, that's the takeaway, is that, you know, they let you run wild with it, and you didn't have any rules whatsoever. I mean, you have weird backgrounds that are zooming past each other, and then a repetition of running cycles with Daffy and the dodo bird, and like, it's just so inventive, every frame of this. So, you know, kudos to you on that. With the long lost dodo, your color choices are incredible for the puppet. How did you come about finding the right look for the dodo bird in this stop motion style? Because again, we haven't seen this character in decades, and you brushed him off brilliantly.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I'm glad you like my version of the dodo. Yeah, it was an interesting thing, because, you know, I'm like, okay, I love the dodo, but we haven't really seen the dodo that much. I mean, I think only in Wackyland and then like Do for the Dodo, which was just like the recreation of Wackyland in color, I guess.
Are you really the last of the dodos? Yes, I'm really the last of the dodos.
And so he's color in that, but other than that, it was like, well, what colors should he be? And I don't know. I think the colors in that are fine, but I kind of, in my head, I thought when I think of the Dodo, I kind of think of like the Tiny Toons Dodo, actually.
Wackyland, here I come.
Welcome to Wackyland.
I don't think we're in Kansas anymore. Hello, I'm Go-Go Dodo, and that's all you need to know.
Exactly,
Because I grew up like in Tiny Toons. And so that's what I kind of pitched their way. Like, well, what if I do kind of like the Tiny Toons coloring? Because I like that kind of seafoam look and whatnot. And I just thought it would be nice. Like the other colors are a little, like the colors from Do for the Dodo are a little more natural than I would have gone. Like natural tones. I was like, let's make them like brighter colors, kind of like Tiny Toons Dodo. So they were, I think they didn't expect that, but they were like, oh, okay, that's cool. And that's sort of where like the color for Dodo came up. But it was a tricky thing as I started, because I wrote the episode and storyboarded it and whatnot. So as I was trying to come up with what could happen and how, I realized, wait a minute, we picked like two of the most cartoony Looney Tunes characters, kind of like the two most wacky characters, and then we're putting them in Wackyland. I was like, uh-oh. Is this a good idea or not? Actually, it's like you kind of want the two main characters to contrast one another. Otherwise, it's just, I don't know. Are you gonna have two cartoon characters just blasting around with dynamite in their brains for 5 to 7 minutes? I mean, yes. And so I kind of like, that is an option. But what I ended up kind of doing was like, okay, my favorite version of Daffy is like the Clampett Daffy, like earlier Daffy, because he's just like so outrageously cartoony. But I kind of decided to sort of infuse him, like keep that, but also infuse him more with like the Chuck Jones sort of Daffy, where he's a little more, I guess, I don't know if serious is the right word, but like self-indignant and just like there was it's like he's always a victim kind of in the later Daffy. It's like he's always downtrodden. Absolutely. He feels he's always being taken advantage of. He always feels that everyone's wronging him, So there's some of that in the earlier Daffy as well, but I kind of took some of that so that would contrast the Dodo that's just a cartoon crazy guy, Like there was a Chuck Jones quote that I pinned on my like cork board to remember that about Daffy Duck. I think it was Daffy Duck is an archetype of selfishness, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I should keep that in mind. He's always looking out for himself and whatnot. So but then I still have these moments of just the extreme cartoony Daffy because I love that Daffy and wanted to have those moments. I didn't want to go straight Chuck Jones type Daffy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's an idea to blend them is brilliant, and I think it works really well because, you don't have a straight man. Porky Pig in the original is the quintessential straight man. He's not wacky at all, and he's placed in this world of wackiness, and he can't trust anything. Daffy, he already doesn't trust anything, but he learns that there's even a wider world of wackiness and tooniness that he can encounter with your short, which I think is great. Also, you have Eric Bauza providing the brilliant rendition of that voice that Mel Blanc did of the Dodo Bird and of Daffy in this.
Almost every one of your favorites, we've had a revisiting of, and Wackyland, of course, bringing it to Max was another.
It's just to torture you.
I got to play the Dodo in that one.
Hey, who do you think you are anyway? I'm the Dodo, and this is my egg.
And there's also a hint of the Happy Rabbit laugh, which is the pre-Bugs Bunny laugh that Mel then incorporated for Woody Woodpecker.
I didn't ask for pancakes.
When Daffy gets knocked out. But I mean, a slew of characters of vibrancy all around. You also have Bob Bergen, who is the star, who's saying, no, not again, not again, and then having to switch forms. I thought that was brilliant. Carrie Walgren is the voice of the snake who kisses Daffy, and then the brilliant Fred Tatasciore is the narrator. What a boon of acting talent that you had alongside you.
Don't make me do it again! Whoa, 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 whoa.
Did you direct them as they gave their vocal performances for these?
Yeah, I mean, the voice actors are just incredible. I mean, it's really mind-blowing to see and hear them work. I was there for the recording session, and I gave some thought. There's basically there's a voice director in the session too that I believe his last name's Fletcher, I think, but I forget his first name, but he's been doing it for decades, and it was his company, I believe, that we recorded it at. But so he's doing more of the directing because he knows how to communicate specifics to the actors, and he communicates with them much more than these sort of people, much more than I do. So, I was there to give some thoughts, or just to make sure, they were recording it to my storyboards, basically, which are very simple. My storyboards are very primitive, almost embarrassingly so, to where after this project, I since upped my storyboard detail, because I just felt this is almost I almost feel bad having them act to these storyboards, but they got it. But yeah, so there's not much direction I found that I had to give them. It's they have the script, and pretty much everything they do is just exceeds what I thought they would do, or what they even could do. And oftentimes it was different than I planned or intended, but in a better way, the star, for instance, him doing the voice for the star. I didn't think it was going to be this weird kind of gruff Brooklyn sort of accent, but it was. And I'm that's funnier than I even planned. I'll definitely do that, so there were just some moments where I had to say, oh no, this is more this moment's more tragic than the one before, or whatever. But there's not they're so good that they don't even really do multiple takes. I mean, sometimes, but it's just, they really are the best out there, these voice actors and actresses, and so it was a great honor to have their voices and then be able to animate to them. I mean, the snake voice too, the way she did that voice is just she's doing the snake sounds while she's speaking the snake, and you're just wow. I mean, I thought maybe they put snake sounds in and mix her voice in, but no, she's doing all this.
It looks like this is it. Guess I'm destined to die hungry.
It was a real pleasure. Yeah.
And you also have a cameo yourself in this, with your head painted as an egg. Did you do that painting yourself? Did you paint your own head?
No, someone else painted my head. Yeah, it was my girlfriend at the time had painted my head. That was almost a few years ago at this point, I guess. But
wow.
Yeah, so I shaved my because I finished the short over a year ago, and it's finally just come out now. But yeah, and it took quite some time to make it. But anyways, so yeah, I shaved my head and everything. She painted me up. I have a time lapse of that I'm gonna be putting out there at some point of her just painting my head. And then I did animate myself just in the set like that. I had the remote control, and I was looking at the monitor and or whatever. So that was my little. Pretty much I did that because it's I'm the easiest actor to get, basically, and I'm there. I know how to do it, so might as well put a little cameo in there, I guess.
So all of this, again, to the listeners out there, everything that you're seeing is a photograph. There's no actual video recording. It is all just a series of photographs. That is amazing.
Yeah, stop
and
motion animation.
Wild to think about.
One photograph after another.
The looping segment. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because like this chase sequence that has lights and backgrounds traveling, and it's kind of like this optical illusion of Daffy chasing the dodo as, Daffy is hungry and he wants the dodo bird's egg, and he is, going after the food. The only food that he knows is around in Wackyland. How did you accomplish that technique, and were you inspired by anything specifically for that look?
Your egg? That's my lunch, buddy!
It's like the transition from the desert to Wackyland or whatever. Yeah, that was just like, so that was much of the short is all in camera, which means, there's you set up the set, the props, the puppets, light it and everything, put the camera in front, and then what the camera sees is what we end up seeing in the film. Most of it's like that. But that sequence was different, where I just shot Daffy on a loop, like running angrily or whatever. And then like basically on a blue screen. And so then I could mess with the backgrounds in post and create the transition and just plop him in front of it. And I mean, that was like, okay, well, he chases the dodo. How do they end up in Wackyland? And we had talked about that, and there was some talk of like a more literal thing where it's just like he goes into a whole, I mean, I don't remember exactly what we talked about, but there's so many ways to get characters to transition from the real world to the crazy world.
Wackyland, eh? Sure does live up to its name.
But I just thought I kind of liked the idea of he's just running and running and running and running, and before he knows it, he's just there. And it's like, I don't know, is he like from heat stroke or something, from just like running too much, like, is he hallucinating now? I mean, it's not like, is it a dream kind of thing, because that's overused. But it was like, I just like the idea of him going and going and going, then suddenly he's like, wait a minute, everything looks different. So it's like, I like that more than like the literal, I pressed a button, now everything's different. It kind of takes us along through that moment. I felt like if to do it that way, and it's kind of cartoony, because you're like, wait a minute, isn't he chasing the dodo? Doesn't he see him in front of him? But now he does it. It's like, it helps with the surreal quality, I guess. But yeah, I constructed that background from different footage, like some found footage or stuff that I shot, and just messed with it kind of in post. Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, it's a surreal sequence in amongst a bunch of surreal sequences that really stand out. And as far as the uniqueness, it makes this one of the most rewatchable stop motion pieces we've had in a really long time. And that is to the craft. That's just a wonderful thing that the craft allows. Were you influenced at all by Pee-wee's Playhouse? Because I got the vibes and aesthetic of Wackyland, it being a little bit like Pee-wee's or those classic stop motion scenes where you had inanimate objects coming to life, and like the whole surrealness surrounds you and surrounds Daffy. Was there any inspiration there, or did you pull from anything else?
I mean, yeah, Pee-wee's Playhouse is, of course, a big inspiration. I mean, yeah, I grew up obsessed with it, and I mean, looking at it now, it's inspiring. Like, just the design is outrageous. I love that aesthetic of all the artists that designed Pee-wee's Playhouse. I'd say that probably has inspired a lot of the work I do, it directly or indirectly, as one of the inspirations. It definitely this film, The Forbidden Zone. It's like one of my favorite films from the 80s, directed by Richard Elfman. I don't know how to describe it. It's wacky. But yeah, it's like Oingo Boingo. The director is Danny Elfman's brother. And so it's the first Oingo Boingo music is the soundtrack to The Forbidden Zone. It's a cult film, whatever, but that's like, I strive to make something as crazy as that. So that I feel like there is a direct link to some visuals from that in this. But then also, I mean, I did, I wanted it to feel like a Looney Tunes short, especially like the opening, like the way it opens in the desert. I didn't want to like start too deviated from, Looney Tunes vibe or whatever. So I wanted to start like, well, I want it to look and feel like a classic Looney Tunes short, just in the third dimension. And then, we get into Wackyland, it's like, the rules all change and stuff. But that was a challenge. Like, I didn't want to just from the start just apply my own thing to this and just be like, yeah, sure, there's Looney Tunes characters, but it's my thing. I wanted to make something that fit in the lineage of Looney Tunes classic shorts, and so that's what I aimed for. So a lot of it was like, what's that?
I was gonna say you nailed it, because one of the aspects is a character in Looney Tunes will be dying or on the brink of dying, and then they'll like be hungry, see something that is appetizing, and then all of a sudden they have all this energy and they come to life, and then they go on this crazy adventure to try to get this food. Yeah.
I mean, that was going back to like the story wise, I guess, like that was one of the first thoughts I had early on. I thought about making the short more about food, actually, and like just a constant, like the Dodos just constantly punking Daffy with like food gags of like, oh, you're hungry, here, eat this, but spaghetti turns into snakes or something, and just like tons of food related gags. Eventually, Pete and Alex suggested, well, that's what if it was more like a chase thing, and so that we kind of went that direction where he's chasing him through Wackyland, which is cool too. But like one of the early ideas I had was I just thought it'd be funny to start a cartoon with the main character like about to die. I just thought that's kind of like, well, and that also feels like a classic Looney Tunes thing, but it's also just sort of funny. It's like, okay, here we go. Or we're gonna watch a short. What? Wait, he's already dead, or he's almost died? What the heck? Like that just was humorous to me. So that stayed in. I was like, I would like to start the short with like the main character dying, and like what comes from that, or like what's related to that. Well, food, I guess he needs food. And so it's sort of, that all came from that.
It's ironic because you loved Wile E. Coyote so much that you kind of made this a Wile E. Coyote short with a Daffy Dodo bird overlay, because it is quintessentially a food chase, which is what all Wile E. Coyote shorts are.
That's true.
We just dissected this, and we delved deep into your brain and the recesses of cartoon knowledge, and really strangulated that nugget of information out of there.
Yeah,
we just went on a journey ourselves.
I am always thinking about food, so I guess it did come out. That's funny.
So, starting off, there is a duck that is dead, and the narrator says everyone's favorite duck. And we see a dead duck, and then everyone's second favorite duck is Daffy. So a lot of people have been speculating, was that Donald? Or did you have any idea people were going to compare that to Donald?
The desert, a harsh mistress, blazing sun, sweltering heat, and danger. It is here we find everyone's favorite duck, whose luck has run out. Good thing everyone's second favorite duck is also here, barely hanging on by a thread.
I mean, I have seen, like, I've been reading some comments and stuff that I see on videos or posts about the short, which have been like, largely people seem to really enjoy it. So that's been cool. But I have seen some people speculate at that, which I did think was funny. That was not my intention at all. I didn't think anyone would think that. I mean, they may only be thinking that because that Donald Duck short came out recently, right before this one. So maybe that's why they're making this connection. But no, to me, I mean, that's not like, I mean, that might be my favorite joke in the short. I just think it's really funny, if I do say so myself. But there wasn't like a secret to that joke. It was more just like a misdirect. Like a lot of Looney Tunes humor, when I was talking with Pete and Alex early on, they really hammered in like a lot of Looney Tunes humor. It comes from the idea of misdirects, and I hadn't totally considered that before, but it's so true. It's like, you think this is going to happen, then this happens, and that's hilarious because you didn't expect it. That's why it was important to me to show Daffy's head in the title card, because I'm like, I want people to know, oh, this is a Daffy Duck short. Obviously it's called Daffy and Wackyland, but even just showing him, and then so it's like it starts, you're like, oh, okay, everyone's favorite duck, we're about to see Daffy, and then it's just like, what? He's dead? Why is that a skeleton? And then it's like, oh no, Daffy's actually everyone's second favorite duck. Like, to me, that's just why it's funny, because it's like, it's also self-deprecating. It's like this deprecating kind of self-deprecating humor, which also leads into his or relates to how he sees himself always as the downtrodden guy and stuff. It's like, is Daffy dead? Oh no, Daffy's not everyone's favorite duck. He's second favorite duck. He's next tier down, but he's still alive, So that's why I just thought that was funny. But there's no like secret behind that. I even tried to really make the skeleton look like Daffy Duck's skeleton, so it was like obvious that it was him. But of course, people are going to speculate stuff. Yeah.
I love it. I love that misdirect.
This could be kind of a fun phenomenal moment to reveal a Easter egg in the short, I guess.
Oh, please do.
Yeah, so there's a spot when there's the skeleton, the Daffy Duck skeleton, there's a spider that crawls out of his eye and drops, and we follow the spider. That spider is actually a bug from Nightmare Before Christmas, actually, because my friend Rich Zim, who animated the clay cat dog shot, he's been animating for decades, and he worked on Nightmare Before Christmas, and he had like a jar of bugs. So and he's my friend, and we used to be neighbors for many years. So he was around when I was starting the short, and he was like, oh, there's a bug. Do you want to use a bug from Oogie Boogie and Nightmare Before Christmas? I'm like, yeah, okay. So that's actually a bug that was in Nightmare Before Christmas, and now it's in the Looney Tunes short. And yeah, it's a fun little factoid.
Fantastic. I love that. I love when things are reused and repurposed. Oh, that's so clever.
Yeah.
I can't wait to tell people this.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah.
So there's one other aspect that people are speculating on, which is actually in the title card itself. So you have Daffy, and then you have a smaller Daffy popping his head out of the egg. And it's implied that Daffy eats this smaller egg, Daffy. And there's a lot of speculation online that Daffy is now a cannibal. How do you feel about this?
Well, I mean, I guess technically, I guess he is. I mean, that's, if this short is canon,
confirmed.
Then no, I mean, that's like, something I love about Looney Tunes shorts is they're just one-off cartoons. There's not necessarily a lineage where it's like, a character shoots another character's in the face or with a, and then it's like that character's not dead or he's not permanently wounded. Even the next shot, he might be fine. It's so that was just kind of going with that's the Looney Tunes sort of storytelling techniques where it all comes down to how can we make this the funniest moment. And there's rules, I guess, but they're made to be bent and twisted and whatnot, all in the sake of cartoon humor. So that was behind that. Yeah. I think it's just like, he was desperate, and as he says, beggars can't be choosers. So that's what he had. I mean, I'd probably do the same if I was in his position.
That interpretation is how I interpret it as well. And I talk about this a lot, but Looney Tunes shorts live and die within their 7 minutes. And then they do not retain that footage or that memory of what happened in any other next shorts. Something that actually turns that on its head is Hundreds of Beavers, which is this new movie that just came out. I don't know if you've seen it.
I've heard about it. I gotta see
my wife who watched your short was like, I'm getting Hundreds of Beavers vibes.
Oh, okay.
And,
wow.
I think that's a huge compliment because Hundreds of Beavers does the Looney Tunes jokes, but then the main protagonist learns from them and then, captures the beavers with different antics. It's phenomenal. Cool. I highly recommend it. I think you'll really like it. So my last question is, where do the puppets go? Where are all of the Daffy Duck and Dodo Bird puppets and heads and everything?
Well, I want one.
Yeah.
Can they be sold anywhere?
I know. I mean, I still want to like make a display version because it's like because he has that fur and you touch him thousands of times and I actually had to completely replace his fur about halfway through the film because he just started looking gross because he gets all matted down and stuff. It's like I just can't shoot the rest of the film with this disgusting looking Daffy, so I had to redo the fur. That's sort of I'm dealing with that currently, basically. I mean, technically Warner Brothers paid me to make this, so technically they own everything related to it. And they are wanting to get the puppets from me. I mean, I don't think this is like a secret, but they want to display them like in the Warner Brothers building that they're in now, like in display cases.
Oh wow.
So that's cool.
That's
We're
cool.
just working on like I have to prepare them. Right now they're just in boxes in dozens and dozens of pieces. So I kind of have to like prep them for display, but I think they'll be getting a bunch of the puppets soon for that. I just have to like do work to get that to happen. But I do know that like once that happens, they're not going to be giving it back to me, So
right, yes.
It's weird with stop motion. You make a lot of things. Some of the stuff you just have to throw away because you can't store it all forever. But stuff like the main puppets, it's like you've spent so much time with them. You have a connection to them. You want to like hang on to them or keep them. Sometimes you can. Sometimes the people you made them for, they want them, and that's that. So there's so much stuff from the short that it wouldn't make sense to give it all to them. But they'll probably end up with the main puppets, yeah. And I don't know how long they'll have them on display, but they will be soon. It sounds like, yeah.
Sounds exciting. I hope they make an announcement for that, and I would love to see them in person. So I'm going to try to find out where that's going to be.
Oh yeah, I was just saying, no, they're going to like set it up in the Warner Brothers like offices or something. Like all employees will be able to see it, but unless you can go by the Warner Brothers office, then you may not be able to see them. But
right. I'll have to like track down a friend and a key. Max, thank you so much for being on the show. Where can people find you online?
Oh yeah, so I have an Instagram. It's Mad Max Winston, and I have my company's website is ratbatstudios.com. There's more of the work we've done over the years on there and our reel and whatnot. So those are kind of my two main online places. I'll definitely be posting a lot more behind the scenes from Wackyland on my Instagram soon, along with I guess we didn't talk about this, but the music was amazing. Josh,
talk about the music.
Josh Moshier, I forget how to pronounce his last name, but he's brilliant. I should probably pronounce his last name correctly here. Josh Moshier. Yeah, I guess I did the same. But no, he's brilliant. He did a lot of the music for a lot of the shorts, and I got to go. They actually, for a lot of the shorts, they recorded an actual orchestra of varying sizes, and for Wackyland, there was like an 8-piece or so small orchestra. I don't know if it's called an orchestra at that point, but you know what I mean. I got to go to the recording, and seeing them record to the image was like, it was insane. It was like a dream come true. Like, because I'm obsessed with Carl Stalling and all the Looney Tunes music, and it was like, I can't even believe he's conducting them and stuff, and I'm just like, I can't even believe that I'm seeing this right now, like real musicians playing music to my short. And then there's like the trombone guy that did the wop, 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 like the sad trombone thing, and I was just like, oh. But so I recorded a lot of that, and I'm working on putting together like a reel that'll sync some of that stuff with some shots and moments from the short. So yeah, I'll be putting more behind the scenes on my Instagram, Mad Max Winston.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I highly recommend following you on those outlets, especially the Instagram, because you get to see behind the scenes footage. And Josh Moshier also did the composition of the score for The Day the Earth Blew Up, the first ever Looney Tunes fully 2D theatrical released film coming out later this year. So look forward to that and more information about where to see it. Thank you again, Max, for being on the show. You can follow the podcast over on OFC This Means Pod on X and This Means Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. I am enamored by all of your work. Kudos to you and the team for this one. And I'm going to continue promoting it wherever I can. And as always, stay tuned because that's not all, folks.
You had some pretty crazy characters in this Wackyland. Where did this come from? Was this part of the story, or did you make those up, or what?
I made up all those weird Wackyland denizens. Yeah, it was basically just like I wanted Wackyland populated with just wacky dudes, like I just
including
wanted
yourself.
But yeah, that was just like, I didn't want Wackyland to feel empty. I wanted it to feel populated by, because in the, there's some references to Porky and Wackyland, and in that short, there's just, the weird characters, the guys with multiple heads just walking around, blah, blah, blah. So I just wanted stuff like that, so it felt like we were in a wacky place. Yeah.
Beautiful.